Hello, doers, builders, and shapers of tomorrow. You're all conductors of the world of work. Welcome to the Workestration podcast.
Hello, doers, builders, and shapers of
that's your
tomorrow.
sheet
Welcome to
music.
the
Now
Workestration
go
podcast.
orchestrate. Today, Donna is off, and you'll be hearing from me, your host, Stela Lupushor, only in conversation with Michaela Schoberova. Michaela is the SVP of HR for Global Commercial Transformation with Colgate-Palmolive. She's been at Colgate-Palmolive for over 20 years across leadership development, talent management, organizational effectiveness, HR business partner, and now with enterprise commercial transformation. She holds master's in applied positive psychology from Penn and an MS in HR studies from Cornell. Her company is pioneering digital consumer twins for product innovation and has mandated AI training through their AI hub for all employees. We can't wait to learn about the AI-informed transformations she's seeing at Colgate-Palmolive and at the HR level as well. So, Michaela, welcome. Thrilled to have you.
Thank you.
You've been at Colgate over 20 years, and you've played roles across multiple HR functions. How have you seen an organization like that change in the past 2 years compared to all the previous time that you've been at Colgate?
That's a good question. So, I think it's pretty obvious that pace of change is accelerating, right? And when I look at it from a sort of society point of view, the increased mental health challenges that we have with young people and beyond indicate that perhaps we are not, adjusting as quickly as we should, or we are lagging behind a little bit in adaptation. I still remain optimistic because I think bringing it down to HR, we have to remember what is still the same. So we still need to, find the greatest talent, develop this talent, coach leaders, create a workplace experience that is positive, right? That serve as a magnet for people. And the how is changing very much. But if we ground ourselves in what we need to do, that doesn't change that much. And I think another thing that we have to do is to be a bit more mindful of this well-being impact. And that's for ourselves, like each person, right? But also like be more intentional, conscious, look around others, how are they feeling and how is their well-being? So maybe we didn't have to pay so much attention to that in the past.
Yeah, after all, we're still in human resources. It's not human and agentic resources.
Yeah.
We'll see. We're still here to help the human aspect of the workplace. So I agree with you as far as the pace, because it feels like a blur since the pandemic started. Like there was so much change, and the change is not stopping. It's constant and it's relentless. And mental health is it's very disorienting to experience all of this at once and everywhere. Your title right now includes commercial transformation, right? You wouldn't expect those two words in a title of an HR leader. So what does transformation at the commercial level looks like, and how HR is playing a role in helping the leaders and whoever you're supporting reorchestrate how the work gets done?
So, what that really means is that commercial transformation, that, we are aware that there is a lot of change and that we need to orchestrate it at the enterprise level. So I'm basically a senior HR business partner that works with the teams that look after that, right? What are the capabilities we need? We are obviously marketing, sales-driven company in the consumer product. So those are the critical functions. And, just speaking of marketing teams, right? In the recent years, there's been a huge transformation in how marketing is done, the how. If you think about social media, digital marketing, e-commerce, that has brought a lot of changes. And again, we are at kind of an inflection point with generative AI, where it is changing again pretty significantly. So I work with our leaders to take into account the organization people aspect of that.
Yeah.
But then, we at the same time have to change as HR, right? And I'm part of our HR leadership at Colgate-Palmolive. And I always thought, this is not completely new. I always thought that technology was impacted how we do our work. And I found inspiration because it would also be impacting the functions that I work with. Previously, I worked with other functions in the company. And that sort of connecting the dots across, I find that inspiring, or like creates a way to move forward. For example, employee experience, is very much influenced by what's happening with the consumer experience, right? So we can take a lot of inspiration from that. So yes, it is a bit daunting to, try to manage your own how you do HR work and support the businesses that we support, but also there's some opportunity in seeing, connecting the dots. Right? So if we focus on that, it makes it a bit better.
So rarely I hear leaders connecting the two experiences and looking at it side by side, because if you don't have a good employee experience, customer experience, how can you deliver it if you don't know what that feels like? So I'm so encouraged to hear leaders actually connecting the two and saying this matters, and it matters because the two of them are so intertwined. About time.
Yeah. I mean, there's another example, right? People centricity.
Yeah.
Like marketeers have to be people centric and we have to be people centric. And some of the methods that they use to understand people, we can use to understand people, right?
And we look at the experience through the lens of the worker, not just HR processes and how we make HR processes more efficient. So it's such a different mindset, I think, for HR practitioners to consider. So you started kind of getting into the AI space. So let's go, because it seems like everyone can't stop talking about it and everybody wants to hear more. I don't know at what point in time we will stop, but I think not anytime soon, unfortunately. Digital twinning, it's a topic a lot of companies, as they embrace the agentic philosophy, they're starting to experiment. I've seen a lot more experimentation of people with personas who say, I'm going to build a digital twin for myself such that you can go and interact with me and I can scale myself. Whether that's the best way of using AI, the jury is still out. But I think in the context of enterprises, it's a really interesting scenario. You build digital twins such that you can simulate different scenarios that could play out. You can build different way to test certain things. So there was a very great case study in the MIT Sloan about Colgate's digital twin experiments, and I suspect you were a little closer to that. So can you describe, in the context of the Colgate, what that digital twin project was all about? What a real use case of applying digital twin development to consumer world?
Yeah.
And what have we found?
So, it's an ongoing process, right? But I think we kind of got into this space early, and we basically created a proprietary system where we create out of big amounts of data. Some of the data is our, historical internal data on all kinds of research that we have done. Some of it is from our partners and, public domain. And it basically brings together different kinds of data about user behavior, motivation, purchase histories, right? Then some physiological data, like how people react to the shelf, to colors, to different things. And also, of course, very interactive data from search in terms of what kind of questions they're asking about our categories, adjacent categories, etc. And out of that, we can create kind of virtual representation of different types of personas of consumers. Now, how do we use this? It's basically to accelerate the innovation process in the early stages. We still, of course, any kind of product that goes out, is tested with real people and the concepts are validated with real people. But at the beginning stages, we can quickly get the reactions of these digital consumers to new concepts that we are creating. And we also obviously check parallelly whether these are accurate. This really saves us a lot of expensive prototyping, maybe the time it takes to, source and deliver a traditional consumer research at the early stages. So it accelerates our innovation process. And it continues to evolve. It's like very exciting, right? Because this is an application of AI for growth of the company's business. I heard recently our AI team is very proud because they published a paper with a university. They collaborated with some researchers about how to quantify the feedback of the digital twins, right? Because they respond in a qualitative manner. And then how do you, compare that to each other? So they found a way how to do it so that now we get, that as well. So that's exciting.
It's cool. Wow. So you have synthetic customers, in essence, that you're building such that you can do the early testing and validation before you go.
Before you go further in the iteration and the innovation. Yeah.
Makes total sense. And I think it's a very, very helpful and really the right type of use cases that could benefit both the organization, but also benefit those humans who ultimately get the more robust questions, because you removed all the nonsense and the noise out of the research process. So really cool. So obviously, since we're connecting the commercial world and the user world to the employee and HR world, if you can simulate customers and create synthetic customers, what's next? Is it possible to simulate the employee reactions as well? Do you even need employee engagement surveys, or do you create? I'm just speculating on.
Probably is possible, right? And now here I'm just sharing an opinion. So I want to be clear that, my opinions do not represent the company. It's a bit of a disclaimer. But I think it comes down to question of value, right? Like there's a value of doing these digital consumers, as we just discussed. There's a clear business value. And it's a strategic choice, right? Most consumers don't really want to talk to us in focus groups, right? But we do want to understand what their needs are, right? So if we can use some data for that, there's value. Now, for employees, for a company like ours, there's also a choice, like what kind of relationship you want to have with the employees, right? So we have over time kind of over-invested into the human interaction with our employees. And that has led to very relationship-driven culture, which we consider is our competitive advantage. So probably this is not going to be the first space that we would want to go to, but I can imagine people quickly jumping to this in different companies with different strategies, different cultures. And maybe there is some benefit, again, it has to be thought through where the value is and what happens to the other interactions that you're having with people.
And what happens over time, because you need to have a dynamic way of refreshing a lot of that data to make sure it's current, reflect what employees feel and need, and the company could reflect.
That's a good point, right? There's a much more privacy consideration. And also there's much less data, right? I mean, there is much more data on consumer behavior, right? And etc.
And also what type of decisions will you make as a result of that? Because, if we leave it to engagement surveys, nobody does anything much with that data anyway. So I guess it's a safe use case, but when it comes to maybe.
That is not completely true, like we try to be very diligent, actually looking at it, sharing it, right? Because if you keep asking people and doing nothing about it, then obviously they won't even answer, right? So being able to share the results and act on it quickly is like a good discipline. Otherwise, don't do it, right? Isn't it? Okay.
So I'm not referring to Colgate.
No, but yes.
Perennial problem of some of the surveys.
Of the surveying, yeah.
as you mentioned earlier, right, you were early on the journey of adopting AI. What structures did you build inside the company, and how are you approaching the scaling and the development of employees and accessing the AI tools? Do you train them? Do they have access to certain guidelines and parameters and guardrails? As you were deploying the AI, did you see people resisting the adoption? What lessons can you share with our audience?
So, we definitely invested early into giving access to all of our employees to like the major tools. We use primarily Gemini because it's our, Google is our collaboration tools, general email, chat, etc. But we had ChatGPT first actually before the Gemini came on. And, various other tools for the more sophisticated users. There's some agent building tools, etc. But in order to give that kind of broad access, we call it the AI Hub, is where you can access all the tools. And in order to get access to that, there was a required training, a very short, easy training. But as with any new technology, you're going to have some early adopters who are like super excited and maybe don't think through all the consequences. For example, what happens with our proprietary data when you are querying publicly, public systems, right? So we have our tools, of course, behind a firewall, right? That most companies would now have these kind of enterprise agreements. But, that then there will be users who are too afraid, right? And so it reassures them. So we didn't really get resistance to it. Like people understood that we need to use AI responsibly, but still we've provided it to people. Now, what helps with adoption, which we want to encourage, because we think that people need to have these skills, otherwise people's skills will be atrophied, not current. So I think the greatest driver of adoption is application to what you do, right? Like the type of work that you do in any kind of a small or big ways. It can be in very small ways to get you started. In various parts of the company, we have kind of groups of people that get together who do similar kind of jobs so that it's very applicable to them, and share with each other. Oh, I'm using this and I'm using that and I'm using it this way. So it's kind of like an optional lunch and learn. One of my groups is doing they call it Super You. So it's kind of about augmentation, and it really helps people adopt because they see concrete examples and it's peer driven, right? It's not like mandated in any way. So, we have some of those activities going on.
I love that because it says more about the culture of the company, that there is willingness to experiment and be early at the forefront. There is also interest in supporting each other and that collegiality and like hanging out with your colleagues and learning from each other, which is fun. But also, I think it's the psychological safety that people have to be okay to fail, which is a whole different environment for people to innovate and build their skills. I think speaks a lot to the culture that Colgate put in place and continue to fosters. I love also the peer-to-peer learning, and I think this is such an underutilized
method.
Because this is one of those technologies that it's really difficult to have a top-down with it, because it's so unique to your context, to the work you do, to the way you use it. And friends will actually tell you much more and teach you much more, but also AI itself will teach you much more than any training class.
Yeah, that definitely, like, I think of AI as a learning tool, right? Like it's a learning tool. Yeah.
And I love the Super You. You have a bunch of superstars now.
Yes, with a lot of super people.
The way it's supposed to be. So speaking of the business and the culture, you've always been about the growing the business. And full disclosure, the way we met was last century.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Okay. When I worked on the project as a consultant, and that's how we met at Colgate. And I was always struck by brand value and how much respect Colgate-Palmolive as a company got, despite the fact that you have small headcount, very nimble operations, distributed, federated, but the projected image of the brand and the business was always anchored to that human centricity, to look at it through the lens of both consumer and the workers. And there was always this kindness, I think, in the way people would interact with each other and respectful interactions at work and beyond. So that's why we're still friends. How many years, how many decades later? When you think what it means to HR to be at the center of creating this type of culture and looking at the world through the growth lens, not through the efficiency lens, do you see HR playing that big role in influencing the business and how it operates, but also how that applies to HR itself?
Yeah, definitely. You want to look at both sides, right? And like the efficiency play is, the first one to go to, right? But we see this as a strategic enabler, basically. So there's a lot of applications that are in the growth space. I've mentioned the innovation on the business side, but there is also how do we better personalize and create content for marketing content that this enables a lot. Also, how do we better capture the demand, right? Like find people in the right moments to share with them our content, which can create growth. So this technology can be used for growth, right, of the business and getting more of our product to the consumer. But there's a lot of efficiency uses. For example, our supply chain is very keen on not only generative AI, but machine learning and the robotics, etc. And for example, there's a predictive maintenance. If you measure the data, you can fix something before it actually breaks and see the early signals. But in the HR world, we need to continue to think about that in the context of the goals of each business or each function, and how do we grow and how do we become more efficient, right? Now, in the HR context, the grow has a special meaning because we are growing our people. And I think there's definitely applications that we are already having or building in that space. So AI-powered coaching is one of them, right? Which brings coaching to more people. The other one is much harder to do and to really get good value is AI-powered skill-based career development or management or even talent management. So those kind of skill-based tools. And then on the efficiency side, right, like in order to be able to do all the stuff of working with the business and, looking at the organization and people implications, we still have to get our HR work done, right? Through very simple things like generative AI can help us manage our knowledge base. When new people come in, it's always hard to learn about all the programs, policies that we have. Onboarding, becomes more efficient. We can, of course, and this is a commonly used, we can answer basic questions of employees and managers through AI-powered tools. We can develop learning in super fast manner today that we were not able to do. So there's a lot of efficiency play that helps us, but we do keep in mind, like, how can we grow either our business or our people through these technologies?
That's awesome. It's so good to hear the choices you made as far as where you think AI will have a bigger impact, like coaching, like learning, knowledge management. I think a lot of companies prioritize the efficiency plays. So that's why we ended up with a universe of talent acquisition bots that help the candidates create a deluge of applications that then forces the talent acquisition team to create the deluge of tools to process all of that. And nobody wins in the end. You end up with a bunch of slop and there's efficiency, actually a lot more noise than needed. As opposed to coaching, it's expensive and it's really heavy human-centric activity, and it's really difficult to scale at mass. And that's why we typically had coaches only for senior leaders. And with AI, now you really can accelerate and give access and democratize a lot of it. So how did you find that AI helps indeed democratize and scale to a broader set of users? What is the early successes of application of AI in the context of coaching?
Of course, we were like curious. We piloted, and we were very impressed with what the tools can do. So I think this all started basically democratization of remote interaction, which I think like pandemic helped us a lot, which allowed providing coaching at scale, connecting coaches to people and getting some of the cost of that out, which companies like BetterUp pioneered or whatever scaled, so that middle managers could have access to coaches, and some of the scheduling and all that kind of stuff got out of it. And yeah, then the AI part came in. I read some article recently that when you measure sort of in the public space, people's personal interaction with ChatGPT, majority of the questions they're asking are in the space of like their own personal well-being and growth, right? So that's encouraging. However, they are not coaches, right? So they can give you quick answers, very useful answers sometimes, but it is not coaching. Whereas these coaching tools, they are trained to actually ask you questions, right? Which is one of the key skill of coaches, and keep asking you questions so that you come up with the answers. They are trained to kind of remind you of the goals that you set, right? Which is one of the key functions of human coaches as well. And they can actually be well personalized, right? So if you have a certain personality style or way of communicating, etc., they can learn quickly how to do that with you, right? So those are the most sophisticated tools. And yes, we decided after a pilot to scale because it does add value. I think this technology will bring more coaching to more people, and probably better coaching also. One of my partners in the coaching space, is very interested in this area and really is working about how we can augment even the executive coaches to the senior people, etc., how they can augment themselves and how can the profession of coaching really evolve with this technology rather than being threatened by it. Yeah, so it can augment actually the human coaches as well.
Is that Anna Gallotti?
Yes, that's Anna. Anna is a part of the Coaching Federation leadership, and this is a topic of passion for her.
We could bring her on as well, and definitely we'll include in the show notes links to her profile so people can check her out. She's amazing.
Perfect, definitely. Yeah.
So in addition to being able to coach, the AI is always positive, right?
Right.
Just to bring it to your academic background, you studied applied positive psychology at Penn, and you always bring that lens to the work you do and the methods you're applying to your day-to-day activities. How are you thinking about that lens in terms of AI?
This is a very good question, and I intend to learn a lot about that in the near future, because the International Positive Psychology Association, it has a virtual summit the last week of March that is focused on this topic, both on sort of opportunities for well-being, but also like risks or watch-outs for human well-being. I'm excited about that. But, already when I completed the programs now 10 years ago, right, there were people in the research space there that were using natural language processing that was improving to really get, do better research, do better psychology research that was both qualitative and quantitative. And so I think that is like super exciting for the research space, because psychology for many, many decades was very quantitative and, just statistical, as opposed to like really getting deep. But in terms of my learning from the program and how I think about the current state of the world with AI, I think that we as leaders have to really pay attention to what's happening to human relationships, right? In the space of research about well-being, it is very clear that the one variable that is like a super variable impacting well-being and impacting longevity, even how long we live, is our human relationships. So how do we keep those human relationships while we are also, adopting technology is really key. The second piece is in a space of like values or ethics. So one thing that we learned about was this kind of taxonomy of what is best in people, right? Which is called character strengths. And this was done as a research of what societies and religions over human history have always valued, right? There's certain traits that not all societies value, like being on time, for example. But every society values, courage, kindness, wisdom. And how do we build these, continue to build these? Because it's important to be able to evaluate, right? Like, and decide, choose how we use these technologies and where they're going. And you could argue that maybe we are kind of losing some of that. But I think it can get there. The education systems catch up. Maybe they take longer, but they can play this role. We may need to play that role as well as employers to continue to think about, let's help people adopt, but let's foster this human relationship. Let's foster our cultures, our values in the companies. I have a very cute example from my own personal life. My daughter is 7. She's a first grader. And I was just blown away by a recent module that their school put together to build their sort of questioning and critical thinking skills, but also to build community. So they visit all the neighborhood little establishments like bakery and bookstore and pharmacy and firefighters and EMTs, and they, ask them questions. But through that, they're also learning how to build relationships, right? And so they'll be equipped, with those skills early on. If, the school system doesn't do that, then we employers are going to have to catch up, right? And supplement that in somehow.
How cool is that? And now AI can give you that experience really of going to talk to the baker and
Yeah.
looking how the bread gets made. And how awesome is that? I think we adults also should do some of these
Yes.
tours around the neighborhood because it's important to connect to the locations. We're so kind of abstracted ourselves from the reality, what's happening in the ground in our neighborhoods, that it's time to build some of those relations, walk out. And I think it was Douglas Rushkoff, one of our prior guests, who had an essay, and kind of the highlight of that is, go to get your neighbors to know them, go borrow an egg, then go tomorrow to return the egg. Start with those local activities to really feel part of the community, because that will be one of the most important skills and actually grounding experiences as our lives moves more and more into the ether.
Yeah. So like an example would be, we have our digital twins, right? Which obviously is a people centricity tool, but we still encourage our people to actually go and learn the techniques about how you can talk to people that you know, but even people you don't know, someone you meet in the shop, about their needs and in relation to our categories. So we had this program, which was called Footsteps, and people had like little different tasks that they could do and collect their footsteps in order to actually interact with the human consumers.
I love those games for adults.
Yeah, it was a great program. It is still ongoing.
Oh, cool. One of the domains that you're specialized in is leadership development. If you think about working in this new way, and the type of leadership that we need to develop going forward, especially since it's not just AI that is disrupting everything, right? You have broader economic trends, you have labor market shifts, you have geopolitical tensions. All of that is impacting the type of leaders that we need to navigate the next decade. What are some of the traits that you think will be necessary for the leaders going forward?
Mhm. You know, here I'm very inspired by one of our partners, Bob Johansson from the Institute for the Future. He helped us a couple of years ago work on our leadership model to kind of make it ready for the future. But I also interact with him recently, and some of his colleagues talk about the BANI world, which is the A stands for anxious, right? So I think one of the antidotes that Bob proposes, and I really believe in, is it's really empathy and, in general, emotional intelligence, right? That leaders need to have. So, how can we reduce, or manage this anxiety that exists around us? And through listening and empathy, that is a one way, but also like being able to manage your own emotions and project calm, project peace, spread that calm energy to people around you, because that I think is going to be a key skill for leadership. Obviously, and this is not new, providing clarity to people, right? Of course, clarity becomes more and more difficult because leaders themselves don't know, right? There's a lot of uncertainty, but we have to make some choices. We can still prioritize what we are going to work on, right? So if leaders can prioritize what people should focus their attention on, can articulate clearly what is not changing to provide that point of stability to people, that is going to go a long way, I think. So empathy, clarity. And I think that in the spirit of, if you try to plan out around everything that is happening, you're going to be paralyzed. So I would say agency, like, moving forward with imperfect information, trying something, of course, being thoughtful about how it can go different ways, experimenting, learning, and allowing people also to do it within some boundaries. And because of my positive psychology background, there can be agency for the benefit of humans, and there can be agency for not the benefit of humans. So it has to be positive. It has to be grounded in some values, which is why the character strengths come in play, and setting some boundaries for the agency of the people around you, if that is your role as a leader. I would say those three things.
First of all, you mentioned BANI as a framework, a concept. Do you want to share a little bit more what that is with those who are not familiar with the concept?
Yes, so I think everyone's familiar with VUCA, right? That came from the military environment, and it was about the volatile and uncertain world, right? And I think the evolution of this is probably post-pandemic, and the B stands for brittle. So it's basically that all of a sudden a system that we've been relying on and taking for granted can fall apart, right? Think of healthcare system during the pandemic, right? So that's an example. We've spoken about anxious. Then the N stands for non-linear. So we kind of cannot expect the things to go in a logical, linear ways, and be prepared for that. And the I stands for incomprehensible. Now, one thing that I found cool that we've learned from Bob is that in order to sort of prepare yourself for this kind of environment, more and more executive teams are taking improv training in order to really train their brains to be able to respond quickly to situations and what is happening. So that's an interesting development. It's, I guess, a new way to describe the world around us, and kind of help us also to think what can we do, right, in such a world as leaders. So Bob has a new book about this, and if you're interested, I guess we can share that link as well, right?
Yeah. So speaking of that BANI world ahead of us, or currently and ahead of us, if you think 3 years from now, what are the things HR would regret if we don't take actions today?
Hard to predict. But, I think we should pay attention to, again, like how our people are interacting with the AI and the new technology, and think about one, what does it mean for what skills we have to develop, right? So we talk about this a little bit in terms of, critical thinking, right? Not just accepting the answer. As you said, AI is always positive, so it kind of reinforces what you already believe, etc. So critical thinking, the relationship building, right, with actual humans. So I think we need to be able to foresee like what skills we're going to have to develop. But and I think there's an amazing potential for this on how to use it as the learning and development tool. So how do we have to adjust the way we deliver learning to people because this tool is available and they themselves in their personal lives are using it? So what is that going to mean for the space of learning and development? Because I think that's where we can really add value as the human resource function. And of course, the part that we discussed about being part of the business discussions and understanding, but focusing on the upside, on the efficiency, but also the impact on how to organize and how to grow people in the space.
Mic drop. As a consultant, I always try to alliterate things. So what I heard is curiosity, right? We need to continue to use AI to lean into the curiosity of us as humans, but also our ability to develop new skills and new capabilities. Calm, such that you can navigate the whatever next few years are going to bring with cool head and rational decisions. Clarity, or at least the leaders to be able to provide clarity to their teams and not be complacent about the or even be okay to have the empathy for themselves that they don't know everything and they don't need to have control over everything. Character strength, critical thinking, community building, and relationship building. All of this can unleash so much creativity and connection for organization, such that organization can grow, but also for us as humans. At the end of the day, that's all that matters. That's all we have, each other. So thank you, Michaela, for your time, for great insights. We covered a lot, but all of it is so kind and human-centric. And I'm so grateful for leaders like you that are continuing to drive this mission forward.
Thank you for your wonderful questions and making me reflect upon those. And in general, I always learn a lot from you. So and we have to continue to learn. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me today.
And that's your sheet music. Now go orchestrate. You've been listening to Workestration, hosted by Donna and Stela Lupushor. Music by Philippe Visitiu. Everything else we're doing ourselves because someone has to walk the talk on lean operations. Find show notes at workestration.ai. Follow us on LinkedIn, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If this episode sparked something, leave a review or share it with someone trying to solve the same problem. Want to be a guest? Book time at workestration.ai. Thank you for listening.